Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. I have a few things at the top. You've seen the Secretary's statement. The United States strongly condemns the attack in Nice. We extend our deepest condolences to the families of the deceased and injured in this senseless attack on innocent people. We can confirm that we are aware of 2 U.S. citizens, Sean and Brody Copeland, who were killed in the attack in Nice. We express our condolences to their family and friends. The U.S. Consulate in Marseille is providing all possible consular assistance. Out of respect for the privacy of the family, I will not comment further on that. Our consulate in Marseille continues to make every effort to account for U.S. citizens in the city. Privacy considerations also prevent us on speaking more on any specific case absent written authorization. Additional consular officers from U.S. Embassy Paris are en route right now to Nice to provide assistance to U.S. citizens in need. U.S. Embassy is operating normally. U.S. citizens are urged to contact their family members to let them know if they're okay. U.S. citizens should also minimize their movements around Nice and be vigilant of their surroundings. Continue monitoring local media for updates. Adhere to the instructions of local authorities. Next, on South Sudan. The situation in Juba remains fluid. Although the events of the last several days have made it more difficult, we believe it is still possible that these longtime political adversaries can still come together in the interests of the South Sudanese people. We condemn all actions by the government to prevent civilians from boarding flights out of Juba or otherwise departing South Sudan. It is unacceptable, given the conditions in Juba, to prevent civilians from freely departing the country. We are also concerned about the actions by government security forces to beat and temporarily detain transitional government officials affiliated with the SPLM-IO on July 14th. We call on the government to ensure the protection and safety of all members of the Transitional Government of National Unity, irrespective of their affiliation in the SPLM-IO or any other party. Currently, there are no U.S. government-chartered flights scheduled. Commercial airlines, I'd note, have restored flights to and from Juba. U.S. citizens seeking to leave South Sudan are encouraged to use commercial airlines. We are also grateful for the efforts of several foreign governments for their evacuation efforts and support to U.S. citizens. The U.S. ambassador and emergency personnel remain in the country, engaging diplomatically with leaders in South Sudan and supporting U.S. citizens in the country. U.S. aid personnel also remain in Juba to assess humanitarian impacts of the fighting, to work with partners to meet urgent needs, and continue U.S. aid operations. We continue to press the leaders of South Sudan to end the fighting. We call on all parties to allow civilian freedom of movement and provide unfettered humanitarian access to all people in need. We also remind the parties that destruction and damage to humanitarian facilities and violence against aid workers is unacceptable and must stop immediately. And final, a scheduling note. As previously announced, next week the United States will hold a pledging conference in Washington in order to raise support for the humanitarian and stabilization needs in Iraq. Today I'd like to welcome the Netherlands as a co-host. The United States is pleased to be co-hosting this important event with Canada, Japan, Germany, and now the Netherlands. The July 20th pledging conference in support of Iraq will provide a unique and important opportunity for the international community to assist in remedying the devastation caused by Daesh to the most vulnerable and give the Iraqi people the means to rebuild their nation. And with that, Leslie.
Thank you. I just want to come back to the Nice attack.
Yeah.
How many Americans do you believe that are still around there or that may need assistance?
So, as you know, U.S. citizens aren't required to register their presence when they travel overseas. We don't maintain comprehensive lists of U.S. citizens. You know, estimates of U.S. citizens in particular countries can vary. We don't want to offer figures because they're just not authoritative. Though, I will note, and I'll take this opportunity, travel.state.gov. For U.S. citizens traveling overseas, please register. We encourage you to do that as you go. For U.S. citizens in Marseille who need immediate assistance, they can contact the U.S. Consulate General. The French government has also set up an emergency line.
Did the United States have any information about this attacker? Was he known in any way to the United States?
So I know my colleague at the White House spoke a little bit about this. You know, we're about 18 hours after this attack. You know, I think a lot of you guys had long nights. We had a long night here at the department as well. We're going to let the French investigate this. I don't want to get ahead of this.
So the French have the French asked for any assistance from the United States?
So the Department of Justice has reached out to our French counterparts to offer assistance. I don't have what the French have asked for, but I'd refer you to DOJ to speak to that because we have offered.
And then lastly on this one, is there anything that has come up in the U.S.'s monitoring of the situation that would indicate who was responsible, whether he was part of any organization?
You know, again, I think it's too early to get ahead of that. We're 18 hours out. Let's let the investigation move forward.
On the same topic, I mean, while this horrible terrorist attack seems to have been conducted by a lone wolf, the term lone wolf and so on, all indications or all information show that the mosques in places like Nice and Marseille and Paris and others that are really funded and supported by many of your allies, you know, mainly in the Gulf, they basically sort of instigate, you know, that kind of rhetoric and so on. And my question to you that I've asked in the past as well, why can't the United States get its allies to commit to tone down that kind of rhetoric in these major mosques that really prey on the vulnerable and the weak and the non-belonging and so on?
So I guess I have sort of three-part answer to that, and hold me accountable for all three, okay? First one, this is not Islam. This is not Muslims. Let's be very clear on that. And I want to put that out point blank. You know, whatever motivated this individual to do that attack, you know, it's not Islam. Secondly, in terms of our communications, separating it from your question, we do work with our partners and allies around the world on messaging. You know, the Global Engagement Center here at the Department of State works very closely to counter that sort of inflammatory rhetoric and messaging. And finally, on the last point, you know, it's too early to talk about motivation here. And you know, out of respect for it's almost 100 people now, over 200 injured, you know, let's let the investigation move forward.
It breaks my heart to be asking these questions
know,
and so on,
Syed.
but the truth of the matter, I mean, I understand, and I don't want to be misconstrued as suggesting that
course.
this is a
No, of
standard or
course.
anything like this. But in fact, these clerics that are, you know, they compete with one another on who can be more extremist, and they are funded by governments that are close allies of the United States. I'm saying that why can't this issue be raised and be raised in public so they can be held accountable?
So
you know,
we do
and
talk about
you follow
violent
the money.
rhetoric.
You
We
know?
do talk about the importance of countering messaging, not only online, but face to face. You know, I think it's too soon to make that link now. Okay. Ma'am?
As you doubtless know, Secretary Kerry spoke about the terror attacks in Nice while he was in Moscow.
He did.
And he underscored the implications of the attack for the talks that he's holding there, particularly about coordination in Syria, that the terrorist attack makes such coordination more necessary because Syria is an incubator of terrorists.
Yeah.
I know this is a little early, but do you have the sense that the Russians view the situation the same way as Secretary Kerry? That is, in this terrible tragedy, there could be a silver lining with the implications for better coordination for dealing with the Syrian civil war?
So thanks for the question. I actually just got off the phone with our colleagues in Moscow. I'm told discussions are ongoing, so I don't have a readout on outcomes of that meeting. So I'm not going to discuss that. However, what I would say is we've been clear, and other members of the ISSG have been clear, that ungoverned spaces in Assad's oppression have been breeders for violent extremism. You know, linking this to this attack, I'm not going to do that, but the causation is very clear. Syed?
Yeah, I want to just follow up
Yeah.
on this point. On, you know, suppose the plan, or the much talked about this administration plan to counter ISIS. It talks about cooperation. It talks about creating some sort of a control and command center that will operate together, American-Russian command and control center, possibly operating out of Jordan and so on. So all these details are out there. Has there been any kind of reaction? Has there been any agreement?
I'm not going to discuss
we will do
what
this if you do
purports
this?
to be a leaked document. In terms of the tangible outcomes of that meeting, I just don't have anything for you right now because the discussions are ongoing.
Okay, because it does speak very clearly. I mean, both the Secretary of State and the Foreign Minister of Russia, and in fact the Russian President and our President, they all spoke about, there are groups that are on the terrorist list, like Jabhat al-Nusra. They are fair game and they ought to be attacked and so on. And there's going to be some sort of exchange of information on these things. Why must this be held to some sort of, you do this, we will do that? Why can't they coordinate on this very issue?
So I would say that, the cessation of hostilities, who was included in that and who was excluded from that, that was coordinated. We've been very clear, Daesh and al-Nusra are not parties to the cessation of hostilities. But beyond that, in talking about coordination or details of that, I'm just not in a position to do that as of right now.
Liz,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll get to you, Leslie.
just one thing. The discussions are ongoing with Lavrov.
The discussions are ongoing in Moscow. I'm not quite sure what configuration they're happening in now.
Okay, so was it they met earlier this morning and then there was a break and then they've gone
Yeah,
back
I
in?
think you saw that they actually went over to the French embassy together.
I did not see any of that stuff. I
To,
didn't get
to,
any.
to sign the condolence book. So Foreign Minister Lavrov and Secretary Kerry did.
Are there any indications yet whether there is some sort of agreement?
Again, discussions are ongoing. I just can't.
It's
get
too early
ahead
to
of
tell?
them. It's too early, I think, to characterize it.
Could you say the discussions have lasted longer than expected?
I would say that the discussions are ongoing, and is Moscow +7? +7, so it's past 9 o'clock at night.
The secretary said that the meeting with the President Putin lasted till 1 in the morning. When did the meeting start?
To be honest, I don't have that granularity right now. So we can check that.
Okay. Different topic?
Of course.
Now, one second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. We'll get to gender and then we'll
I
check.
have a follow-up on this
Of course.
question. He did not mention the names. Whenever we hear Iran, we hear, but the most extremist extremists who come out of funded mosques are from the Wahhabism of Saudi Arabia. So, and they are our allies. So what exactly is going on? Like they have a Wahhabis and Saud family have that combination for 400 or 500 years. It's a very tight knit. So can we? Do you this department, this building reaches out and tells them to tone down? Because what he was trying to say without naming is that there is this money pouring in, and they can be identified on 1, 2, 3, 4. You remember 9/11? What happened? So.
Of course, we remember 9/11 to gender.
So-
I mean, what we would say is that we constantly and continually engage with our partners and allies around the world on the issue of violent extremism, particularly on messaging, as I mentioned to Saeed, in person, online, written products. We understand, and I think, the attacks in Baghdad, the attacks in Saudi, the attack in Bangladesh, terror has no borders, and we're seeing this increasingly. I think you guys feel this too. It's just a series of attacks. So this international coordination, and we're speaking specifically about messaging, but on all the lines of effort, has never been more important. So we are engaged.
Can I
Saeed?
just follow up on
Yeah,
on
and I'm
this
sorry,
very
I
issue?
will get to you.
According to French report, there are 1,200 French citizens who have gone to Syria and back. So there's a real problem with the foreign fighters and so on. Now, most of these people that went across the border into Syria or even on to Iraq, they have gone through the Turkish border. So the Turks conceivably could have lists and so on of all these people that cross their borders. Would that something that you would be asking the Turkish to provide? Let's say if they have German citizens, provided to Germany, French citizens provided to France, and so on.
So
That's
another
something-
complicated question.
Right.
What I would say is the issue of foreign fighters is
Right.
something we're very focused on. I think Brett McGurk has stood up here
Right.
and has spoken about this. And the president has said, these lone wolves need to be right once. We all of our nations need to be right 100% of the time. We do engage with our partners. Turkey has been very focused on closing that border. In terms of the information sharing, I'm not going to be able to speak to that, but it is an active conversation that we have with our partners and allies. Sir.
Yesterday, Secretary Kerry said that he discussed with Mr. Putin Ukrainian issue.
Yes.
Do you have any details on that? And if no, what is the current position of the United States administration on Ukrainian issue during this visit of Mr. Kerry to Russia?
So I think you saw the readout that we did last night. As you know, Secretary Kerry did speak about this. Our position on Ukraine remains the same. Crimea is Ukraine. We have condemned the Russian aggression that continues to be an unhelpful and destabilizing force in Ukraine. We also encourage Ukraine to step forward and continue to make the reforms that are so important for the Ukrainian people. For details on that discussion, though, I'm going to refer you to the readout that we put out. Okay? Leslie?
Emails.
Emails.
Yeah, it's usually one I don't bring up, but since my colleague Matt is not here, he usually asks about it. Trying to get into some more kind of any update on kind of how you're going to go about this process.
I do have an update. It's quite long, so I'm going to ask you guys to bear with me while I go through this, okay? We have additional information to provide about our internal review process. I will not be speaking about any specific case, nor will I be engaging in hypotheticals. As is standard, to protect the integrity of our work, we cannot discuss the details of an ongoing review. Just as the FBI did not comment on its investigation while it is ongoing, we will not comment on our review. That means I cannot confirm for you what specific materials we will consider or what individuals may or may not be evaluated for possible employment or security clearance-related actions. Our policy, so yes, it is moving. Yes, well, let's go and I'll give you exactly what we can. Our policy is to assess each case on its own merits while taking into account all relevant facts and circumstances. Furthermore, the department cannot comment on the status of any particular individual's security clearance. Our goal is to complete this process thoroughly and expeditiously, but we will not put arbitrary deadlines on our work. There's a significant amount of information about our process available to the public online. You'll like this. For instance, I would point you to our Foreign Affairs Manual, specifically 12 FAM 500 and 230 sections. I'll do my best to outline this process from the podium, but I cannot speak to every provision in the FAM. I also cannot speak to how the process would be applied to account for any specific circumstances. In summary, and I still have a lot more to go, so stay with me, diplomatic security is responsible for evaluating security incidents and then reviewing them as appropriate for potential security clearance-related actions. Diplomatic security is also responsible for referring certain incidents to our Bureau of Human Resources for potential employment actions. No matter the individual or conduct involved, the department conducts the review process in a professional, impartial, and fair manner that takes into account all relevant circumstances. Multiple components within diplomatic security are involved in the process, supervised and overseen by the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security. One component of diplomatic security conducts an initial assessment of security incidents and, when appropriate, issues security infractions or security violations. Security clearance reviews are conducted by a different DS component. As with Director Comey at the FBI and Attorney General Lynch at DOJ, standard for our Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security, to be involved with high-profile or complex matters, which is certainly the case here. Assistant Secretary Greg Starr is the person in diplomatic security who is ultimately responsible for affirming or rejecting recommendations to revoke an individual's security clearance. A decision to revoke a security clearance may be appealed to the Security Appeals Panel. Similarly, our human resource process can include multiple components, but ultimately, Director General Arnold Chacon is responsible for taking disciplinary actions on an employee. That's our process. I know there's questions about potential outcomes of the process. The short answer is that outcomes for any individual depend on their specific circumstances, taking into account all of the relevant facts. This is what our review will determine. Current employees can face a range of employment discipline, including reprimand, suspension, and termination. People with security clearances, including former employees, could have those clearances suspended and/or revoked. We also maintain a security file on all personnel involved in security incidents. For individuals who no longer have a security clearance, the incident information is kept in their security file so it can be considered if they apply for a security clearance in the future. When evaluating whether a person remains eligible for access to classified information, the department follows the whole person approach based on the government-wide adjudication guidelines. Our Foreign Affairs Manual states that, quote, each case will be judged on its own merits, end quote, based on specific, quote, facts and circumstances, end quote. Under the guidelines, we can look at the severity of an incident, whether the person is a repeat offender, whether the individual is amenable to training or reform, and whether the incident was a technical violation or resulted in actual harm to national security. As we have said, now that the FBI and DOJ have concluded their investigation, the department intends to conduct a review of Secretary Clinton's emails according to our well-established security incident program. We're preparing to conduct our review.
Okay.
So there's a lot. Thank you for your patience.
Well, yeah, we're going to digest quite a few, but
Yeah.
bear with me on this because I'm trying to get my head around it.
Yeah.
So the question here is, has the FBI handed over, and how many emails has the FBI handed over to be reviewed?
At this stage, we have not received any from the FBI.
Have they indicated to you when that's going to be?
I have no timeline on that, but we have not received any.
And then on DS, do they have the final word? Does Greg Starr have, the Assistant Secretary Greg Starr, have the final word on this? Or can Secretary Kerry or even the President overturn those decisions or have the final say?
So I'd say there's, as I mentioned, there is a significant amount of information about our process online. So for this particularly, look at section 230 and 500 of 12 FAM. The 500 section outlines the Security Incident Program, which is handled by the Program Applications Division of Diplomatic Security. The 230 section outlines the security clearance, which is administered by the Office of Personnel Security and Suitability, also within DS. Both components operate under the oversight and supervision of the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security.
So when it comes to diplomatic security, is that withdrawn as you're investigating it? Is that withdrawn at the end, or is it withdrawn at the beginning? Is it frozen? How does that work?
So the process you're talking about, and forgive me for the FAM references, but it's really detailed and really specific. Mm-hmm. So if people are looking for the details on this, refer to 12 FAM 233.4. I'm going to refer you there. As a general matter, the suspension of a security clearance is available if diplomatic security determines it's appropriate while they carry out their review. However, if you read the FAM, you'll see it's not an automatic process. Whether or not to suspend a person's clearance depends on the circumstances. It's a judgment of the trained professionals in DS.
And then how unusual is it that diplomatic security, or how unusual is it that this process, that you use this process?
So, you know, I'm not going to talk sort of precedent, but I would say that, you know, there's offices within diplomatic security, and this is their mandate. You know, all of us within the department and we've spoken about this, Secretary Kerry has spoken about this, have the obligation to safeguard and correctly handle information.
So would this also include former employees? It includes former employees, right?
As I said.
As you said. Does it include employees that are not part of the State Department, but might also be involved in this, in the emails?
Okay, I'm not going to speak, as I mentioned, to the specifics of any individual, any case. I just want to outline this broadly, bring you guys up to date on it, and give you the references because it is such a technical and granular matter.
Yeah, but I mean, as you know, Secretary Clinton has been involved in this, and a lot of people are wondering how this could affect her. So would you be able to make some kind of outcome when it includes her, or whether it includes somebody in a lower position? Is everybody going to be looked at
Again,
equally?
I just can't speak to the specifics on who will be reviewed, what incidents will be reviewed, but I will say the review is taking place.
And you can't tell us when this review is going to start?
No, the idea of projecting a timeline on this, will say, they're committed to fair, impartial, and absolutely rigorous process.
And when you say, just one more question, when the FBI says that it's looking at thousands of withheld emails, that it's going to give state thousands, you don't know if it's going to be thousands or if it's going to be
I couldn't
hundreds.
speak
no
to
idea.
the FBI document. Abby, you good?
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. To gender, are we doing emails?
No,
It's a,
Yeah, I'll come to you, Jamie.
it's just a technical question.
Of course.
I'm trying. She actually asked, and the answer, I didn't understand the answer.
There's a lot of words in there.
So the question that I have is that when the FBI was looking at it, they looked at Secretary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at those, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 people who handled that private server. How many of those people are State Department employees or not employees?
So this-
And
Go ahead, I'm
technically, is Secretary Clinton a former employee or she's above your law?
Okay, so I'm not going to talk to specific individuals
Okay.
or specific incidents. Secretary Clinton's a former employee. Are we on emails?
No.
Okay, let me go to Jamie and then I'll come over to you, Abigail.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Deputy Secretary Blinken called South Korea and Japan Deputy Foreign Minister level meeting in Hawaii. Do you have anything on that?
I do. Thanks for the question. Deputy Tony Blinken, the Republic of Korea First Vice Foreign Minister Lim Sung-nam, and Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Shinseku Sugiyama had productive discussions at yesterday's trilateral meeting. The three discussed interests of mutual concern, including the DPRK nuclear threat, North Korea's deplorable human rights situation, maritime security, and they also considered potential actions for increased trilateral cooperation.
Are there any discussion further six-party talks meeting issues?
I have nothing to share on that, Jane.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Abby, and then I'll come over to you, Samir. And Saeed.
And then-
We'll line it up. And then to gender.
I'm actually going back to Nice for a moment.
Of course, Abby.
I recognize you can't speak to specific cases, but are you able to give a general number of Americans who were injured within the
I
from
cannot.
the attack?
No, the Privacy Act, without written authorization, precludes me from speaking about them.
Are you able to say whether there are any Americans who've been
We
injured?
are aware of reports that there are U.S. citizens who have been injured.
You're aware of. Okay.
Okay.
And are you able to say the number of consular officers who have been moved from Paris down?
You know, I don't. I think actually, to be honest, it's a surge. It's very fluid. We'll meet the need. Samir.
Iraq Pledging Conference.
Yes.
Do you know how many countries will participate, will attend?
You know what? Let me actually check and see if I've got that for you. I don't. I think actually, to be honest, we're still getting invitation numbers. I may have more for you on Monday. Okay, so let me see if I can look into it and then I'll update you.
Thank you.
Sure. Wait, was it to gender?
Pledging conference?
Yeah. Do you guys mind? Go ahead.
Do you have any information on representation from the KRG in the Iraqi
I think we've
delegation?
spoken about this quite a bit, Lori. I think at 2 briefings this week. Again, we would refer you to the working group to speak about invitations.
I sent them a note. They haven't responded to me.
But they would be the appropriate ones. Say,
I have a quick question on Egypt. There's going to be a hearing on Sunday about freezing assets of 2 major human rights activist figures, Hussam Bahgat and Gamal ad-Din and others. The last time there's going to be a ruling. The last time this situation was about to happen, Secretary Kerry spoke and apparently put it off. Is he likely to do something like this again, or?
so what I would say is we're very much aware of Sunday's
Hearing.
potential announcement after the hearing. We are monitoring the situation closely. Obviously, as you mentioned, this department has been very engaged in it. We'll see what the hearing outcome is. I'm not going to get ahead of that, but we are watching the situation very closely.
Because this is part of an ongoing thing that targets American and Egyptian NGOs and groups that deal with human rights issues since 2011.
I know, and as we've spoken about, we're very concerned with the deteriorating situation there for these NGOs whose purpose is to help the Egyptian people. To gender.
You must have seen the reports what's going on between India and Pakistan. 19 to be observed as Black Day, to express solidarity with people of Kashmir after Indian forces killed the Habibul commander Burhan Wani. And there's a lot of back and forth going on. Are you, this department, in touch with them, or after this?
Okay, so I spoke a little bit about this yesterday. Obviously we're gravely concerned about this situation. We're gravely concerned about the violence. In terms of those specific comments, which we are aware of, I'm going to refer you to the government to speak to the words of their own minister. As we've said before, it's a situation where we need all parties to this to reduce the rhetoric, reduce the violence, get back to a situation where they can have dialogue.
But, it's 15. So on 19th, it'll be observed Black Day. So there will be an escalation in tension.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to know a technicality of a question. There's a visiting minister from one of the countries, and he was expressing he expressed something. Is that, allow in a way, he's here for a particular reason, and then his comments against the other country from this soil, does it have a tacit support of your department?
No, I wouldn't say that any call, for increasing tension or increasing rhetoric is something that we would support. We've been very clear on our position on this. But again, it would be the government of that minister to speak to his remarks. Okay. Say
Yeah, could I ask you, the Congress just released the 28 pages that link the Saudis, or possible link between the Saudi embassy here in Washington and the 9/11 hijackers and so on. Do you have any comment on that?
Okay,
They
so
just
did they
did that.
release it? Did they
Yes,
post
they
it
did.
online?
They just did.
Okay. I think actually Josh Earnest spoke a little bit about this. Obviously, the ODNI had transmitted it to Congress. It's a congressional report, so Congress had, the choice to release this publicly. In terms of the content of the report, it's a congressional report. In terms of the redactions, that's a question for ODNI. But if you have specific questions on State Department equities.
Okay, well, the State Department has expressed the view in the past that making this public will somehow compromise relations or alliances with certain countries and so on. Do you still stand by that position?
I would say-
Do you believe that releasing these 28 pages in any way will compromise your alliance with Saudi Arabia?
I wouldn't characterize that, no. I would say that, Saudi Arabia remains one of our most important allies in that region. We have robust cooperation with Saudi on counterterrorism, regional challenges, economics, energy. our cooperation in those and in other areas will not change.
One sec, you said economic.
Mm-hmm.
When this report had come out that it will be released,
Mm-hmm.
if you remember, they had threatened that they're going to dump U.S. bonds and things. There would be, how many billions. So, do you expect them to carry out any threat?
I would refer you to the kingdom to speak particularly to those remarks. I would say our close cooperation with Saudi Arabia has not changed. Yeah. Of course, and then Abby will get to you.
Is Pat Kennedy going to be involved in any of this?
Okay, so thanks for the question.
Mm-hmm. I know there's been some questions about that.
Yeah, so first, as we've said many times, Undersecretary Kennedy did not approve, nor was he aware of, the extent to which Secretary Clinton was using personal emails. No matter the individual or the conduct involved, the department will conduct and does conduct the security clearance process review in a professional, impartial, and fair manner that takes into account all relevant circumstances. According to our Foreign Affairs Manual, the Undersecretary for Management, Pat Kennedy, becomes involved in a security clearance revocation in the event of an appeal. He is a member of a 3-person panel. That's at the very end of our process. I'm not going to speculate that it'll even...
And you said Secretary Kerry is not going to be involved?
So Secretary Kerry will be informed of the details, the results of the review after its completion. Again, I'm not going to speculate on outcomes or hypotheticals. As we've said many times from this podium, he wants this review done by the book, and the book requires diplomatic security lead and conduct this review.
And then just one more small one.
Sure.
So FAM is pretty clear that supervisors can be held responsible for their subordinates' actions. How are you going to deal with this? Is this?
That's something I think I'm not going to speculate on that. I can't speak to the details of that. I can't speak to the review. And honestly, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals on the review.
And then, are you going to deal it as one big infraction, or are you going to look at several?
Again,
you don't know.
I can't speak to how they'll do it, specific incidents, individuals. It's just the review is happening. We'll do it by the FAM.
Will they do? Oh, okay. But will they be clear about that before it even starts? Because it sounds like it hasn't even started.
No, the review is in process. They're preparing to move forward.
Okay.
Okay, Abigail.
Upon the release of the 28 pages, the Saudis put out a statement saying that they hope this cleared up any lingering questions about their actions or intentions. Do you feel like there are any questions that still linger about their actions or intentions? Do you think that this report answers any of those questions?
So the 9/11 Commission's report provides the authoritative account of who perpetrated and supported the 9/11 attacks. The 9/11 Commission built on the work of the Joint Inquiry and fully investigated the allegations in the 28 pages without finding any evidence that the Saudi government or members of the Saudi royal family knowingly provided support for or had advanced knowledge of the 9/11 attacks.
Could I ask you a question on U.S. stated position on the peace process, the Palestinian-Israeli peace process? Very quickly, I know you don't comment on Camp David and so on, but the GOP's new platform, it drops the two-state solution as part of its program and so on, and which is really a departure from positions taken by both Republican and Democratic administrations. Do you feel that such a thing can complicate your efforts in the future?
You're like doing multi-part answers today, Saeed.
Sorry.
One, can't comment on campaign rhetoric. I just won't do it.
But it is a departure.
Secondly, our position on a two-state solution has not changed. It is the administration's position. It has been several administrations' position. But beyond that, I'm just not going to comment on platforms that may have been put forward. Okay.
This Chinese, the American businesswoman has been charged by China.
Yes, Gillis. Thank you.
So you've been, according to reports, you've been officially informed of these charges.
Yes, and thank you for the question. This is an important case. Chinese authorities have informed us they will bring a case against Ms. Fan Gillis to the Nanning Intermediate People's Court, We urge China to resolve this case expeditiously and provide a fair and transparent legal process in accordance with local law and in a manner that also respects international human rights. We also ask that China ensure that Ms. Fan Gillis continues to have full access to an attorney. U.S. Consulate is providing consular assistance, including monthly consular visits to Ms. Fan Gillis since she was detained on March 20th, 2015. Consular officer last visited Ms. Fan Gillis on June 20th. We monitored this case very closely. I'd note one last thing. Senior government officials have raised Ms. Fan Gillis's case with senior Chinese government officials on multiple occasions. We will continue to do so.
How senior? That's what was going to be my follow-up.
Yeah.
Is the secretary taken this up at all?
You know, I'm not going to speak to the secretary's conversations on this, but I will say that it's not just once. We continue to raise this.
And can you tell us in what condition is she? You said there's been some consult. There's been visits, but is she in good health?
You know, I don't believe I can actually speak to that, but we have been providing monthly consular visits. We will continue to that. The safety and the health, the well-being of U.S. citizens remains one of our highest priorities.
Do you know what she's going to be charged with?
I don't.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, guys.